Thank you, Philippa. It's an honor to be here. My friend, the poet Christian Book, says that in terms of the hierarchy of cultural prestige, poets and composers currently rank somewhere just below ventriloquists. There is therefore a slight irony in a composer appearing at a conference promoting responsible citizenship, because it isn't self-evident where the responsibility of an artist lies. In some respects, devoting one's life to art can be an abdication of responsibility because, while the value of the arts is implicit and few would seriously question it, it is rarely explicit. It can be very difficult to tell if an individual artist is wasting your time or not. One clue might be if they're off in a corner talking to themselves rather than inviting you in, but we'll get to that later. The power of music is to transcend space and time, to speak to us in a symbolic language centered around fundamental polarities such as tension and relaxation, movement versus stasis, stability versus instability, and the establishment and the disruption of patterns and patterns within patterns, both in terms of local detail and on an architectonic level. All of these concepts transcend language, they transcend meaning, and they allow us to access a vast field of undiluted feeling. Music is an art that is both abstract and embodied. Abstract because it deals with intangible relationships between opposing or contrasting forces. Embodied because the essence of music is found in rhythm, by way of the feet, and melody, by way of the breath. As the poet Ezra Pound put it, when music strays too far from the dance, it wilts. So music provides us with abstracted, meaningful movement, allowing us to experience vicariously modalities of movement and, by extension, modalities of being that transcend the physical limitations of what we are able to do here on Earth. That is the essence of music, and as such, I believe the desire to engage with this art stems fundamentally from a need for transcendence, regardless of the type of music and whether or not this is done consciously. You can call it whatever you like, but what other reason would there be to be an artist than to celebrate being itself? So, what is the creative faculty? It is the capacity to make connections that others cannot see, to make those unlikely, unpredictable, and unaccountable leaps of logic and intuition that result in the limits of the human expressive capability being extended. Modern communications technology also holds the alluring promise that all are, at least potentially, artists. Because there are no longer any barriers to access, anyone can produce anything they like, post it to YouTube, and potentially find an audience. A complete unknown leaping into the spotlight and very quickly amassing 1 billion views on YouTube is no longer outside the realm of possibility. Artists now have at their disposal tools so powerful that the musicians, painters, and poets of the past could scarcely have comprehended them. But we are also witnessing a profusion of cultural production so incredible in its dimensions that it is impossible to keep up with. Coming to terms with creativity today is made even more difficult by the fact that our culture no longer seems to have a center or any kind of shared story. And today, for better or for worse, there are no more gatekeepers. Some have lamented this opening of the floodgates. How are we to know if the work is any good? How are we to distinguish between the authentic creator and the trickster? How can we navigate through this vast bedlam of competing voices, each laying claim to the prize of originality and authenticity? Let me tell you a story about the Austrian composer Anton von Webern. Webern had a kind of fanatical devotion to his art, of a kind and of an intensity that is extremely rare. He worked with tweezers and a microscope, creating extraordinary miniature worlds of exquisite lyricism, but equally strange intensity. He devoted his entire life to the production of these pieces. Webern was born into one of the world's great powers, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, in 1883, the year Wagner died. He inherited an artistic golden age, but lived to experience its catastrophic downfall. He was born at exactly the right moment to witness both world wars, as well as the transformation of his once vast and powerful country into a tiny, devastated state. In addition, Webern's life was unspeakably tragic. His ability to earn a living, already extremely tenuous, was gradually reduced to almost nothing due to the Nazis' suppression of all forms of artistic modernism. Entartete Kunst, they called it. Degenerate art. His only son was killed on the front in 1945. Only a few months later, just after the end of the war, desperately tired, depressed, and ill, he was accidentally shot to death by an American soldier while residing in a small village in central Austria in order to escape unstable conditions in Vienna. Through all of this, somehow, Webern continued to compose, despite the fact that performances of his music had become increasingly rare, despite chronic poverty that was dramatically exacerbated by the war, despite the mockery of his contemporaries and the absence of any form of commercial success. You might wonder if such tenacity in the face of disaster is not a form of insanity, but such is the strength of the artistic calling. It compelled Webern to give us this great gift of a singularly powerful and expressive music despite his circumstances, and perhaps the greatest irony of all is the fact that only a few years after his death, Webern's music became a great posthumous success story, making him an artistic celebrity, a shining light to successive generations of musicians. Today, he is one of Austria's great cultural exports. There is no shortage of genius 20th century musicians. The names may be known to you: Stravinsky, Charles Ives, Leighton and Hopkins, Morton Feldman, Ruth Crawford Seeger, Yanis Xenakis, John Coltrane, Karlheinz Stockhausen, and countless others. But the Webern case has continued to haunt me. How could such a man, who had lost virtually everything it is possible to lose over the course of a truncated and difficult life, manage to produce such spectacularly beautiful work in the worst possible circumstances? Well, perhaps that is how you can recognize genuine creativity. The authentic artist will speak even when there is nothing that can be said, no one to say it to, and nothing with which to say it. The authentic creator will say what they cannot prevent themselves from saying, because there are forces that are speaking through them. Virtually no one in the developed world will have to contend with the sorts of conditions that afflicted Webern and so many other great artists in the past. It is no exaggeration to assert that there has never been a better time to be an artist in history, period. And lovers of the arts have never had such extraordinary conditions. Today, the totality of mankind's cultural production is available to everyone on the planet at any time for free. There are no longer any barriers to access, or, with the rise of free educational content, to understanding. How is it then, in the 21st century, now that many European nations have lavishly supported artists and artistic institutions for over 70 years, that so many artists today feel lost, frustrated, without a purpose, and, most troubling of all, unable to engage with an audience? I have often been struck by the fact that many composers today insist on trying to squeeze through the tiny, congested door of the academic world, too timid to leave its reassuring glow. Too many artists are standing off in a corner, safe from controversy, but also far from the realm where the needle of our culture is being moved. I suggest a better story. Put your work out there, into the world, be courageous, and see if it survives. You may find that if you truly have something of value to impart to others, it might not be trampled underfoot. The point is this: for all that I love his music, I don't want Webern's life trajectory to be repeated. No more tragedies, no more isolation. What I desperately want is to pull things together, to invite everyone in, to share things in a collective celebration. Johann Sebastian Bach wrote hundreds of four-part chorales so that people could get up and join their voices together in a congregation. And I believe that the new media may present us with an extraordinary opportunity to accomplish something similar today through different means. And to artists, I would say, the floor is yours. Astonish us. Connect us to the astounding air of our present moment. You have everything you could possibly need, and more. You have resources that the artists of the past could never have dreamed of. So perhaps that is where the responsibility of artists lies today. I believe in a future of a vastly expanded, passionately engaged audience, and artists able to marshal extraordinary resources in the service of courageous and bold creative exploration. Perhaps the purpose of creativity is to engender a dialogue between past, present, and future that nourishes and irrigates our culture, keeping it supple, vital, and mobile. So let us resonate to this vast, collective interiority that is available to us through art. Let's have a song of praise for the future. This is why artists make things. It's why we dare to have children. And the key word is love. Thank you.